The Mahindra brothers of India acquired the license to build Willys Jeeps in 1947 and began assembling completely knocked-down Jeeps imported from the US. Since then, Mahindra has made Jeeps under agreements with every one of the many companies that have owned the Jeep brand. That's nearly 75 years of making Jeeps. Today, Mahindra is the largest manufacturer of four-wheel drive vehicles in the world, with a production of over 150,000 units annually. So, let's take a look at Mahindra Jeeps over the years. In 1947, Mahindra imported 75 CJ3A, which mostly went to police and other law enforcement agencies. The first Mahindra production model of the Jeep were completely knocked-down CJ3Bs that were assembled at the Mahindra plant in Bombay, present-day Mumbai, in 1949. They were standard 81 inches wheelbase Willys Jeeps. These CJ3Bs were powered by the 2.2-liter Hurricane petrol engines that produced 72 horsepower. Diesel fuel was cheaper than gasoline, and many Jeeps were converted by the owners to diesel. The steering was switched over to right-hand side, and the Jeeps were stretched to odd lengths to serve as taxis and people movers in rural areas. The 4x4 transfer case was unnecessary for these applications, and a large number of Jeeps had the transfer case removed. Only in mountainous and heavy jungled areas were the Jeep's 4x4 capability kept. After 196,000 units rolled off the assembly line, U.S. production of the CJ3B was discontinued in 1968, giving way to the CJ5 and CJ6. But in India, the philosophy was clearly, why change a good thing? The CJ3B had become an icon of the Indian motoring landscape, and manufacturing continued until 2010 with minimal changes. In 1955, the CJ4 was introduced. It was a version of the CJ3B with the wheelbase stretched to 2.31 meters or 91 inches, making it slightly more spacious with room for up to 8 people. The CJ4 shared the same engine as the CJ3B, with the same T90C Warner 3-speed transmission, T18 four-wheel drive transfer case, and Dana 44S front and rear drive axles. Mahindra used the label CJ4 for their long wheelbase version of the CJ3B, but this is not to be confused with the Willys CJ4, which was intended to follow the CJ3A. Although the Willys CJ4 has an unclear history, it was probably developed as a prototype in 1950, right around the time of U.S. involvement in the Korean War when Willys was producing military Jeeps. During wartime, military contracts take priority over civilian projects, and the CJ4 development was apparently a victim of those circumstances. Sketchy records seem to indicate only one prototype was ever built. The CJ4A was introduced in 1974. There were several modifications to the body of the CJ4A, including a new side-opening rear tailgate, new front fenders, ventilation hatches behind the front fenders, and finally the window wiper mechanism positioned on the body instead of the windshield bay as on previous versions. The Mahindra CJ4A was better suited to add metal or fiberglass hardtops for applications like ambulances and government vehicles. The CJ4A shared the same engine as the CJ3B, with the same T90 3-speed gearbox and T18 four-wheel drive transfer case. The cost of gasoline rose steeply because of the oil crisis in the 70s, but due to government subsidies the price of diesel was just one-third the price of gasoline in India. In 1974, Mahindra responded by retrofitting the 2.3-liter International Harvester B275 diesel engine from its tractor line into the Jeep CJ4A chassis and calling it the CJ500D. The CJ500D put out a modest 38 horsepower and just 117 Nm of torque. The CJ500D came with the same 3-speed gearbox and 4-wheel drive transfer case as the CJ3B. Mahindra also started offering this without the 4-wheel drive, realizing that many of these were being used for people mover purposes. The Mahindra CJ340 is very close to the original Jeep CJ3B, with the same body tub, same ladder frame chassis, and many interchangeable parts, but with updated mechanicals. This vehicle did not have doors, but the seats and dashboard were updated. The CJ340 came with a 2.1-liter Peugeot diesel engine that put out 62 horsepower and 124 Nm of torque. The CJ3B 3-speed T90 transmission was replaced by the KM-T90, a 4-speed gearbox from Kia, which was localized and manufactured in-house. The CJ 340 was made between 1989 to 1994. In 1995, the CJ 340 became the CL 340, as the name CJ was owned by Chrysler, and the license to use it expired. After continued poor sales, Willys discontinued its line of FC forward control vehicles in 1965. Mahindra took over the Willys assembly line and developed their own versions of small cab over, forward control, trucks, buses, and vans, starting with the FC-150. The FC-150 had all the running gear of the CJ-3B, including the Hurricane F4-134 engine on a wheelbase of 81 inches. By straddling the seats directly atop the front tires and astride the engine, the FC-150 allowed for a much longer cargo bed than would be feasible if it had used the traditional CJ layout with the interior occupant and controls placed behind the engine. The Mahindra FC-160 soon replaced the FC-150 and used a chassis with a wheelbase extended to 93 inches or 2.34 meters. The manufacture of the FC-160 ended in the summer of 1999. In late 1996, the CL340 underwent major modification and was named the Classic, with production ending in 2000. It was also powered by the 2.1-liter Peugeot diesel engine with a 4-speed KMT90 gearbox. The Mahindra MM440 was based on the Jeep CJ5. It was the first to get the rounded fenders and bonnet design. The MM440 also used the 2.2-liter Hurricane petrol engine with a 3-speed gearbox and 2-lever, 4-wheel drive transfer case. The Mahindra MM540DP and the present-day Mahindra Thar look almost identical, no surprise since the body shell is exactly the same. The MM540 looked stunning, as it had proper doors and a much better designed body. The MM540 was also powered by the Peugeot 2.1-liter diesel engine and came with a 4-speed manual transmission, with synchro mesh only on gears 2, 3, and 4, and a 2-lever transfer case. This was later changed to a single-lever, 4-wheel drive in the MM550. The MM550 also got an engine update, shifting to a 2.5-liter diesel from Peugeot with 72 horsepower and the BA10 5-speed gearbox. The last of the CJ3B-based Mahindras was the Major, which debuted in 2001 and lasted until October of 2010. The Major was powered by the 62 horsepower Peugeot 4.88. The Mahindra Wagonette was the predecessor of the Mahindra Commander, which came with either a soft-top model or a full metal body with 5 doors. It was based on the long-wheelbase CJ5 chassis. It also was powered by the 2.1-liter Peugeot diesel engine, while a lower variant had the 2.6-liter diesel engine, putting out 59 horsepower. In the mid-1990s, Mahindra decided to get adventurous with design. It built a long wheelbase CJ5 body with rectangular headlamps and a heavy plastic grille and bumper. This was the Mahindra Armada with 5 doors, comfortable seats, a proper dashboard, and it also had the option of air conditioning. The Armada had the same 2.5-liter Peugeot diesel engine. The wheelbase was 91 inches or 2.3 meters and featured the altered new generation chassis frame, which was a 115 by 60 mm steel box section rather than the 100 by 50 mm C-section used on earlier models. The Mahindra Bolero was first based on the Mahindra Armada Grand. It got a completely modified front, a flatter roof, and more creature comforts including power steering and air conditioning in 2000. This was Mahindra's first luxury SUV. It was powered by a 2.5-liter diesel engine with a 5-speed gearbox, and some variants got the option of a 4-wheel drive, Borg-Warner transfer case, with electric shift mechanism. While the body design is definitely not Jeep, the chassis is an evolution of the CJ5, with a completely new independent front suspension on the 4x2 variant. The Thar is the torchbearer of Mahindra's legacy of 4x4 vehicles. It was launched in 2010 to fill in the space left by the Major after discontinuation. Thar has become one of the most famous off-roaders in the market. The Mahindra Thar is likely to be the last of the Jeep-based designs. With the same Mahindra MM550 body bolted onto a chassis, the Thar is quite a mix-up of all Mahindra has in its parts bin. However, under the skin it is fairly modern with a 2.5-liter common rail diesel engine, 5-speed gearbox and the Borg-Warner 4-wheel drive mechanism, but with a manual shift system. Mitsubishi also acquired a license from Willys to build Jeeps in Japan and produced a variety of Jeeps for 45 years. View the story of Willys Jeeps made in Japan.